Hello everyone. We have started the communicable disease series. So one of the lecture from this communicable disease series is malaria. Malaria, it is one of the arthropod borne disease. So the learning objectives of the lecture are, at the end you would be able to know epidemiological determinants of malaria, life cycle of malarial parasite, then clinical features of malaria, various malariometric measures for measurement of malaria, then approaches and strategies of malaria control, and guidelines for diagnosis and treatment of malaria in India. Again, we'll be seeing some of the points regarding the National Vector-Borne Disease Control Program related to malaria. Okay. So some of the vector-borne diseases of public health importance are malaria, lymphatic filariasis, Kala-Azar, Japanese encephalitis, dengue fever and chikungunya fever. Out of these, today we'll be talking about malaria. Okay. Starting with the introduction. So malaria, it is a protozoal disease caused by infection with parasites of genus Plasmodium, and it is transmitted to man by certain species of infected female Anopheles mosquito. It is one of the major vector-borne disease across all the continents, and all time it is a priority public health problem. The brief history of malaria. So the malaria, this word is derived from the Greek word which means bad air. The mosquito fossils were found 30 million years ago, and Hippocrates was the first who described the clinical features of malaria. Then in 1894, Sir Patrick Manson showed malarial crescents in RBC to Ronald Ross. Then Sir Ronald Ross described Ross cycle in 1898. Then Ronald Ross named the 20th August as Mosquito Day and 25th April as Malaria Day. Okay. Being a major public health problem, in December 2015, almost 214 million new cases of malaria were there with 4,38,000 deaths. Out of these, almost 90% of malarial deaths are in sub-Saharan Africa. In India, about 21.98% of population lives in malaria high transmission, that is approximately 1 case per 1000 population areas, and about 67% lives in low transmission areas, that is 0 to 1 case per 1000 population. In India, Plasmodium falciparum malaria is the major public health threat. Again, about 91% of malaria cases and 99% of malarial deaths are reported from northeastern states like Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, Orissa, Andhra Pradesh, Maharashtra, Gujarat, Rajasthan, West Bengal and Karnataka. Some of the epidemiological types of malaria are there. First one is tribal malaria, where about 50% of Plasmodium falciparum cases of the country are there. Here the high risk group involves infants, young children and pregnant women, mobile tribal population engaged in forest related activities. Next one is rural malaria, which include irrigated areas of arid and semi-arid plains, where the Anopheles culifacis is the main vector. Then urban malaria, here 15 major cities of the country including 4 metropolitans account for nearly 80% of malarial cases. Then malaria in project areas. So the project areas are the areas where construction and developmental activities are taken up and temporary tropical aggregation of the laborers takes place, bringing in different strains of malarial parasite and non-human population. Then border malaria. These are the high malaria transmission belts along the international borders and state borders. Then forest malaria. These vectors bite humans in their shelters but return to rest in the forest, thus avoiding residual insecticides spread indoors in the shelters. Okay. Now what are the epidemiological determinants of malaria? Hope all of you have revised the epidemiology, like epidemiological determinants and some of the terminologies like incubation period, carrier and etc. Okay. So starting with the epidemiological determinants of malaria. Agent, host and environmental factors. The agent for malaria is Plasmodium species. Here the malarial parasite Plasmodium vivax, Plasmodium falciparum, Plasmodium malariae and Plasmodium ovale. Then coming to the host, man is the intermediate host for malaria and mosquito is the definitive host, and some of the environmental factors are also responsible for malaria transmission. Starting with the agent factors, here we'll see agent, reservoir of infection and period of communicability. So the malarial parasite, the Plasmodium species, 4 species are important, like Plasmodium vivax, which accounts for 40% of malarial cases. Plasmodium falciparum accounts for 50% of malarial cases. Then Plasmodium malariae 1% and Plasmodium ovale, it is very rare, and mixed infections in 4 to 8% of cases. Then the life history of malarial parasite. This parasite undergoes 2 stages of development: a sexual cycle which is completed in human and sexual cycle which is completed in mosquito. Okay. This figure shows the life cycle of the malarial parasite. The life cycle of malarial parasite is completed in 2 cycles, that is in human it is asexual cycle and in mosquito it is sexual cycle. The asexual cycle of the malarial parasite begins in the human when the infected mosquito during biting injects sporozoites in the bloodstream. Okay, so infected mosquito injects sporozoites in the bloodstream of human during biting. Then within 1 hour these sporozoites disappear from the peripheral circulation and some of the sporozoites enter the liver cells. Here after 1 to 2 weeks they become hepatic sezones, and these hepatic sezones burst by releasing a shower of merozytes. Okay, so hepatic sezones burst releasing the merozoites. Then comes the erythrocytic phase where the merozoites attach themselves to the special receptors on the red blood cells and penetrate it and passes through a cycle of phases of trophozoites like ring trophozoite, seasoned and mature seasoned. Okay, and some of the erythrocytic forms do not divide and they get converted into male and female gametocyte. which are the sexual forms of the parasite, and these are infective to mosquito. Okay. Then the sexual cycle begins when the mosquito feeds on the infected human. Thus they ingest the male and female gametocyte, and thus the mosquito becomes infective. And in the gut of mosquito, these gametocytes undergo further development in the mosquito, and thus the male gametocyte gets converted into microgamete and female gametocyte into macrogamete. These micro and macrogametes fertilize, forming a zygote, which is a which is then converted to ookinete within 18 to 24 hours, which is a mobile form, and this penetrate the stomach wall of the mosquito and develops into an oocyst on the outer surface of the stomach. This is oocyst on the outer surface of the stomach, and this oocyst develops within it numerous sporozoids, and whenever this oocyst becomes mature, it ruptures to release the sporozoids. Some of the sporozoids reaches the salivary gland of the mosquito, and thus mosquito is now infective to the human. Okay. So this is the whole life cycle of the malarial parasite, that is a sexual cycle in human being, and this one is sexual cycle in mosquito. Here this is pre-erythrocytic cycle, which takes place in liver, and erythrocytic cycle, and this is exoerythrocytic cycle, where the hepatic sezones or hypnozoids they remain dormant without bursting the merozoites, and these are responsible for the relapses in Plasmodium vivax and Plasmodium ovale. While in case of Plasmodium falciparum and malariae, the erythrocytic phases are responsible for recrudescence. Okay. Then the reservoir of infection. A human reservoir is one who harbors the sexual forms of the malarial parasite. Okay. Human reservoir is one who harbors the sexual forms, that is gametocytes of the malarial parasite. And the children are more likely to be gametocyte carriers than adults. So certain conditions must be met before a person can serve as a reservoir. Like the person should harbor both the sexes of the gametocytes, that is male gametocyte and female gametocyte. Then the gametocytes must be mature. Then gametocytes must be viable, and it should be present in sufficient density, that is at least 12 per cubic millimeter of blood. Then the period of communicability. It is communicable as long as mature, viable gametocytes exist in blood. Then in vivax, gametocyte appears in blood in 4 to 5 days on appearance of a sexual parasite, and in falciparum it appears in 10 to 12 days. Okay. Then relapses. So in malaria, relapses are more common, and these are usual for vivax and oval malaria to relapse more than 3 years after patient's first attack. And in vivax and ovale, the relapses are derived from original sporozoid induced liver sezones, that is hypnozoites, which lay latent long before bursting. Okay. And in case of falciparum malaria, recurrence usually disappear within 1 to 2 years. And in falciparum and malaria, the relapses are due to chronic blood infection, that is erythrocytic caesareocony. Now coming to the host factors. The host factors responsible for malaria are age, sex, race, pregnancy, socio-economic development, housing, population mobility, occupation, human habits and immunity. We'll see one by one. So in age, malaria affects almost all ages. So newborn infants have considerable resistance to infection with Plasmodium falciparum due to the high concentration of fetal hemoglobin during the first few months of life, which suppresses the development of Plasmodium falciparum. Then males are more frequently exposed because of their outdoor life. Then the individuals with AS hemoglobin, that is sickle cell trait, have a milder illness with falciparum infection than the person with normal hemoglobin. And the person whose red blood cells are Duffy negative, which is one of the genetic trait, are resistant to Plasmodium vivax infection.
Pregnancy increases the risk of malaria, especially in primigravida women, and it may cause intrauterine death of the fetus and premature labor or abortion. The socioeconomic development will help us to eliminate the malaria. Then in housing, the ill ventilated and ill lighted houses provide ideal indoor resting places for mosquitoes, and which will transmit the malaria. Then in population mobility, the laborers the agricultural and irrigation laborers, they may import the malarial parasite in their blood and reintroduce the malaria into the areas where malaria has been controlled or eliminated.
Then occupation. So malaria is closely related to the agricultural practices because there may be breeding places there. Then human habits like sleeping out of doors, then refusal to accept the spraying of houses, replastering of walls after spraying, and not using measures of personal protection, for example bed nets. It may influence the man-vector contact and result in transmission of malaria. Then immunity. So the immunity against malaria, the active immunity is species specific. That is, immunity against one strain does not protect against another. Okay. Coming to the environmental factors from epidemiological determinants. These are season, temperature, humidity, rainfall, altitude and man-made malaria. We'll see one by one. The season. The maximum prevalence of malaria is from July to November, where the breeding of mosquitoes is more. Then temperature. Optimum temperature for the development of the malarial parasite in the insect vector is between 20 degrees Celsius to 30 degrees Celsius. Then again humidity plays a major role, like the relative humidity of 60% is necessary for the mosquitoes to live their normal lifespan. But when the relative humidity is high, mosquitoes are more active and they feed more voraciously. And if humidity is low, mosquitoes do not live long. Then the rainfall, which provides the opportunities for the breeding of the mosquitoes. Altitude, The Anopheles mosquitoes, these are not found at an altitude above 2000 to 2500 meters due to the unfavorable climatic conditions. Then one more terminology is there, that is man-made malaria. So here the burrow pits, then garden pools, irrigation channels and engineering projects like construction of hydroelectric dams, roads, bridges, these have led to the breeding of mosquitoes and an increase in malaria. So all these things are man-made. So the malaria consequent on such human undertakings is called as man-made malaria. Okay. Now, what are the vectors of malaria? Remember, the causative organism and vector, these are different things. The causative organism for malaria is malarial parasite and the vector is Anopheles mosquito. Means the vector is transmitting the malarial parasite to the man. So Anopheles mosquito is vector and malarial parasite is the causative organism. So what are the vectors of malaria? Especially the Anopheles. Here the Anopheles culicifesis, Anopheles fluvitalis, Anopheles stephensii, Anopheles minimus, Anopheles philippinensis, Anopheles Sandiacus and Anopheles maculatus. These are the various vectors of malaria. Out of these, the vectors of major importance are Anopheles culicifesis in rural area and Anopheles stephensii in urban areas. Okay. Now, various modes of transmission of malaria. There are three modes of transmission: vector transmission, direct transmission and congenital malaria. So, in vector transmission, malaria, as malaria is a vector-borne disease, it is transmitted by bite of certain species of infected female Anopheles mosquitoes. So, various vectors we have seen in previous slide. The mosquito is not infective unless the sporozoites are present in its salivary gland. Okay. Next is direct transmission. That is the hypodermic, intramuscular and intravenous injections of blood or plasma. For example, in case of blood transfusion and malaria in drug addicts, it leads to direct transmission of malaria. In blood transfusion, the parasites keep their infective activity during at least 14 days in blood bottles stored at -4 degrees Celsius. So it could transmit the malaria. Then congenital malaria, congenital infection of the newborn from an infected mother may also occur, but it is relatively rare. Then the incubation period. In case of Plasmodium falciparum, the incubation period is of 12 days. Then in case of Vivax, 14 days. In case of Plasmodium ovale, it is 17 days. And in case of cotton, the incubation period is of 28 days. Now starting with the clinical features of malaria. So in malaria, the typical malarial fever, it has three stages: cold stage, hot stage and sweating stage. And this attack lasts for 6 to 10 hours. So in the cold stage, there is a general sensation of cold followed by rigors. And here the temperature rises to 40 degrees Celsius and stays at that value for nearly 1 hour. Okay. And at this time, the parasites are demonstrable in the blood of the patient. Okay. This stage is followed by next stage, that is hot stage. Here it is characterized by fever, headache and vomiting. Here the skin feels hot and dry, and this stage lasts for 2 to 6 hours. And last stage is sweating stage. Here the fever comes down with profuse sweating, temperature drops rapidly to normal and skin is cool and moist, and this stage lasts for 2 to 4 hours. And the patient temperature returns to normal. Okay.
You may not see all the typical stages of the malaria in all the patients. So some of the signs and symptoms are headache, body ache, nausea, sudden onset of high-grade fever with rigors and chills, feeling of burning, leading to profuse sweating and remission of fever by crisis thereafter. Okay. The febrile paroxysms occur every second day with tertian parasites, which are Plasmodium falciparum and Plasmodium vivax and Plasmodium ovale, and it occurs every third day with the quartan parasite, which is Plasmodium malariae. Okay. Occasionally, you may get the respiratory or gastrointestinal symptoms, and the atypical symptoms. Here the any fever case without any other obvious cause in the endemic areas during transmission season may be considered as malaria. Okay.
Usually Plasmodium falciparum leads to many complications like cerebral malaria, acute renal failure, hepatomegaly, splenomegaly, anemia, jaundice and dehydration and black water fever. So this severe malaria, it is characterized by one or more of the following features like impaired consciousness or coma, then repeated generalized convulsions, renal failure, jaundice, severe anemia, pulmonary edema, hypoglycemia, metabolic acidosis, circulatory collapse or shock, abnormal bleeding, hemoglobinuria, hyperpyrexia and hyperparasitemia. So severe malaria it occurs when Plasmodium falciparum infections are complicated by serious organ failures or abnormalities in the patient's blood or metabolism. Okay. Now coming to the diagnosis of malaria. So there are three methods of diagnosis. First one is microscopy, which is the gold standard. Here peripheral smear is prepared. Two types of blood films are prepared like thin film and thick film. The thick film is more reliable in searching for the parasite, means whether the parasite is present or not, and in thin slide, that is in thin smear, it is more valuable for identifying the species of the parasite present. Okay. The next diagnostic method is a rapid diagnostic test, that is RDT. These are based on the detection of circulating parasite antigens, and in National Vector-Borne Disease Control Program, bivalent RDTs are used for detecting Plasmodium falciparum and Plasmodium vivax. Okay. The next diagnosis method is serological test, where the malarial fluorescent antibody are detected, but this test usually becomes positive 2 weeks or more after the primary infection. Means by that time the infection may have been cured, but this test is of greatest value in epidemiological studies only and in determining whether a person has had malaria in the past. Okay.
Some of the malariometric measures are there for the measurement of malaria in pre-eradication era and eradication era. So in pre-eradication era, these were spleen rate, average enlarged spleen, parasite rate, parasite density index, and infant parasite rate. And in eradication era, these are annual parasite incidence, then annual blood examination rate, annual falciparum indices, slide positivity rate, and slide falciparum rate. These are helpful during solving the epidemiological exercises, because you have to solve the epidemiological exercises based on communicable diseases. Okay.
The spleen rate, which is defined as the percentage of children between 2 to 10 years of age, which shows the enlargement of spleen, and this is used for measuring the endemicity of malaria in a community. So most of the MCQs will be based on these. So spleen rate is the measure of endemicity of malaria in a community. Next is average enlarged spleen. This is the further refinement of the spleen rate, denoting the average size of the enlarged spleen. Then parasite rate, which is the percentage of children between the ages of 2 to 10 years who shows the malaria parasite in their blood films. Then parasite density index indicates the average degree of parasitemia in a sample of well-defined group of the population. Then infant parasite rate, which is defined as the percentage of infants below the age of 1 year showing malaria parasites in their blood films. And this is the most sensitive index of the recent transmission. Again, this can be one of the MCQ. So infant parasite rate is the most sensitive index of recent transmission. And if it is 0 for 3 consecutive years in a locality, it is regarded as the absence of malaria transmission in that area. Okay. Next one is proportional case rate. This is the number of cases diagnosed as clinical malaria for every 100 patients attending the hospitals and dispensaries.
In eradication era, the first measurement is API, that is annual parasite incidence, which is calculated as confirmed cases during 1 year per 1000 population under surveillance. The areas where API is 2 per 1000 population per year, they are classified as high risk areas in India and they are eligible for vector control. Next is ABER, that is annual blood examination rate. It is the percentage of number of slides examined. Then it is the index of operational efficiency. So actually it should be equal to the fever rate and minimum 10% of slides of population to be examined. Next one is annual falciparum incidence, which is calculated as number of falciparum cases per 1000 population under surveillance.
So next one is the slide positivity rate. It is the percentage of slides which are found positive for malarial parasite irrespective of the type of species. Means it could be a Plasmodium falciparum, Plasmodium vivax, ovale, or Plasmodium malariae. Okay. Then more specific is the slide falciparum rate, which is the percentage of slides positive for Plasmodium falciparum. Okay, means out of total slides examined, how many slides are of falciparum. And then Plasmodium falciparum rate, it is the percentage of falciparum cases. Okay. Then prevention and control of malaria. So various disease control strategies for malaria are Like all fever cases attending primary health center or dispensaries or hospitals for treatment, they should be presumed to be suffering from malaria. Okay. So the various strategies of prevention and control are surveillance and case management. Here the case detection should be done by active surveillance and passive surveillance. Then early diagnosis and complete treatment of the case and sentinel surveillance. Next strategy is integrated vector management. Here we can use indoor residual sprays, then insecticide treated bed nets and long lasting insecticidal nets. Then various anti-larval measures including source reduction. So all these already we have covered in entomology part and integrated vector management part. So go through that. Then next strategy is epidemic preparedness and early response. And last one is supporting interventions like capacity building, behavior change communication, intersectoral collaboration, monitoring and evaluation, and operational research and applied fields research. Okay, these are the strategies for prevention and control. Now coming to the treatment of malaria. So first we'll see treatment of uncomplicated malaria. So there are some of the general recommendations for the management of uncomplicated malaria, like you should avoid starting the treatment on an empty stomach. Then first dose should be given under observation. Then the dose should be repeated if vomiting occurs within half an hour of the intake of anti-malarial drug. Then patient should be asked to report back if there is no improvement after 48 hours or if the situation deteriorates. And the patient should also be examined and investigated for other illnesses also. Okay. So the treatment of Plasmodium vivax malaria. So the drug of choice for Plasmodium vivax malaria is chloroquine. The chloroquine is given at the dose of 10 mg per kg for first 2 days and 5 mg per kg on third day. Means for total 3 days we are giving chloroquine. Then the primaquine is given daily for 14 days. Okay, means for 3 days chloroquine and primaquine daily dosage for 14 days. Okay. Next one is treatment of falciparum malaria. Here we are using artemisinin combination therapy, that is ACT, which should be given to all the confirmed cases of Plasmodium falciparum which are found positive by microscopy or rapid diagnostic test. And this should be accompanied by single dose of primaquine at the dosage of 0.75 mg per kg body weight on day 2. Okay. In case of Plasmodium vivax, we are giving primaquine for 14 days and chloroquine for 3 days. But in case of Plasmodium falciparum, we are using ACT and a single dose of primaquine on second day only. Okay. So this artemisinin combination therapy, we are using artesunate at the rate of 4 mg per kg body weight daily for 3 days and sulfadoxine 25 mg per kg body weight and pyrimethamine 1.25 mg per kg body weight. Okay. So the ACT used throughout the India is this artesunate sulfadoxine pyrimethamine combination, but in northeastern states we are using artesunate lumefantrine, ACT AL. Okay. Now the treatment of malaria in pregnancy. So the ACT should be given for treatment of falciparum malaria in second and third trimesters of pregnancy, while quinine is recommended in the first trimester. And if Plasmodium vivax is the case, it can be treated with chloroquine in pregnancy. Then treatment of mixed infections. The mixed infections with Plasmodium falciparum, they should be treated as falciparum malaria only. And since the artesunate and sulfadoxine pyrimethamine is not effective in vivax malaria, other ACT should be used like AL. Then the algorithm is there for the treatment based on clinical criteria without laboratory confirmation. So for clinical malaria means if RDT for only Plasmodium falciparum is used, so negative cases showing signs and symptoms of malaria without any other obvious cause of fever should be considered as clinical malaria. Means on RDT the test is negative but the case is showing signs and symptoms of malaria and no other cause is detected. So it should be considered as clinical malaria and treated with chloroquine in full therapeutic dose of 25 mg per kg body weight over 3 days. And if the suspected malaria cases not confirmed by RDT or microscopy, they should be treated with chloroquine in full therapeutic dose. Okay. So this is the algorithm for diagnosis and treatment of malaria. Means where microscopy result is available within 24 hours. At that time, if the case is clinically suspected malaria case, then prepare a slide for microscopy, and according to the result, if it is positive for Plasmodium vivax, start chloroquine for 3 days and primaquine for 14 days. If slide is positive for Plasmodium falciparum, then start ACT for 3 days along with primaquine single dose on second day, and if it is negative, it needs further evaluation. Okay. Next, if the microscopy result is not available within 24 hours, at that time perform a rapid diagnostic test. Here the rapid diagnostic test for Plasmodium falciparum, and again you have to prepare the blood smear, both thick as well as thin smear. Then if it is positive, the RDT is positive for Plasmodium falciparum, same ACT for 3 days and primaquine on single dose on second day. If it is negative for Plasmodium falciparum, send the blood slide to laboratory and start chloroquine for 3 days and wait till the microscopy result comes. And if microscopy result is positive for Plasmodium vivax, then give primaquine for 14 days under supervision, as we have already given chloroquine for 3 days. And if it is positive for Plasmodium falciparum on microscopy, then start ACT for 3 days and primaquine single dose on second day. Okay. And if you are using bivalent RDT, so if it is positive, means treat according to the species. It could be a Plasmodium falciparum or Plasmodium vivax. And if the bivalent RDT is negative, then it needs further evaluation. Here you have to look for other causes of fever and repeat the blood slide examination after an appropriate interval. Okay. Now coming to the treatment of severe malaria. So the specific anti-malarial treatment of severe malaria is You have to use parenteral artemisinin derivatives or quinine, but prefer intravenous route over intramuscular route. And give artesunate at the rate of 2.4 mg per kg body weight, intravenous or intramuscular, given on admission, then at 12 hours and then repeat at 24 hours and then once a day. Okay, 2.4 milligram per kg body weight given on admission, then at 12 hours, then 24 hours and once a day. Okay, next one is quinine, which is given 20 milligram quinine salt per kg body weight on admission, followed by a maintenance dose of 10 milligram per kg body weight 8 hourly. And remember, never give bolus injection of quinine. Then artemether 3.2 milligram per kg body weight intramuscular is given on admission, and then give 1.6 milligram per kg body weight per day. Okay. If the severe malaria is due to Plasmodium vivax, it should be treated like severe Plasmodium falciparum malaria only. But you can give Primaquine for 14 days for preventing the relapse as per the guidelines after the patient recovers from the acute illness and can tolerate the Primaquine. Then coming to the chemoprophylaxis for malaria. So for malaria, chemoprophylaxis is recommended for travelers, migrant laborers and military personnel who are exposed to malaria in highly endemic areas. So the short-term chemoprophylaxis, that is for less than 6 weeks, we can give doxycycline at the rate of 100 milligram daily in adults, and in case of children 1.5 milligram per kg body weight. Then the doxycycline should be started 2 days before travel and continue for 4 weeks after leaving the malarious area. Then long-term chemoprophylaxis, that is for more than 6 weeks, we can use mefloquine at the rate of 5 milligram per kg body weight weekly, and it should be given 2 weeks before, then during and 4 weeks after leaving the area. Okay, start 2 weeks before, then during and 4 weeks after leaving that area. Okay, now we'll see some of the points related to malaria under National Vector-Borne Disease Control Program. So before that, we'll see some of the definitions, like malaria control, which is reducing the malaria disease burden to a level at which it is no longer a public health problem. So this is malaria control. Next definition is of malaria elimination, where the interruption of local mosquito-borne malaria transmission, reducing it to zero incidence of the infection caused by human malarial parasite in a defined geographical area as a result of deliberate efforts, and continued measures to prevent re-establishment of transmission are required. Means zero incidence of the infection is malaria elimination. Next is certification of malaria elimination. It can be granted by World Health Organization after it has been proven beyond reasonable doubt that the chain of local human malaria transmission by Anopheles mosquitoes has been fully interrupted in an entire country for at least 3 consecutive years. Then next definition is of malaria eradication. It means permanent reduction to zero of the worldwide incidence of infection caused by a specific agent, and it applies to a particular malaria parasite species. Okay. Now coming to the actual malaria control program in India. So at the time of independence, malaria was a major public health problem in India. So in 1953, the National Malaria Control Program was launched with the primary focus on insecticidal residual spraying with DDT, larvicidal measures, and early diagnosis and treatment of the cases. This program achieved major success and it was renamed as National Malaria Eradication Program in 1958. Okay. The program continued to achieve success, and by 1965 the annual incidence of malaria came down to 1 lakh cases. But then after, because of insecticidal resistance, major setback occurred. And by 1976, the strategy was revised as modified plan of operations. Then again in 1999, the program was renamed as National Anti-Malaria Program. Then in 2002, this program was merged with the National Vector-Borne Disease Control Program. Then in 2010, new drug policy for malaria was launched. In 2013, rapid diagnostic test kits were introduced in this program, and in 2014-15, newer insecticides were introduced. Okay. So the National Framework for Malaria Elimination in India, that is in 2016 to 2030. So this was launched with the vision of to eliminate the malaria nationally and contribute to improved health and quality of life and alleviation of poverty. The goals of this framework are to eliminate the malaria, that is zero indigenous cases, throughout the entire country by 2030. And the second goal is maintain malaria free status in areas where malaria transmission has been interrupted and prevent the reintroduction of the malaria. Okay. And the various objectives of this framework are eliminate malaria from all the low transmission and moderate transmission states by 2022. Next objective is reduce the incidence of malaria by less than 1 case per 1000 population per year in all the states and union territories by 2024. Next objective is to interrupt the indigenous transmission of malaria throughout the entire country, including all high transmission states and union territories by 2027. Next objective of the framework is prevent the re-establishment of local transmission of malaria in areas where it has been eliminated and maintain national malaria free status by 2030 and beyond. Okay. So this table shows the classification of states or union territories based on the annual parasite incidence as a primary criterion. So the first is category 0, which is the prevention of re-establishment phase. And the definition of this category 0 is these are the states or union territories with 0 indigenous cases of malaria. The next category is category 1, that is elimination phase, where the states or union territories, including their districts, reporting an annual parasite incidence of less than 1 case per 1000 population at risk. Means in category 1, the API of less than 1 case per 1000 population at risk. Then in category 2, which is the pre-elimination phase, where the API of less than 1 case per 1000 population at risk, but some of the districts of the states or union territories which are reporting an API of 1 case per 1000 population at risk or above. Then category 3 is of intensified control phase, where the states or union territories with an API of 1 case per 1000 population at risk or above. Okay. So this is the classification of states or union territories based on APIs.
The actions for these three categories will be like for category 1 states or union territories, surveillance using active case detection, passive case detection and sentinel surveillance. Then screening of migrants in these areas, and integrated vector management by including the Panchayati Raj institutions and other governmental agencies. Then IEC, that is information, education and communication, and behavior change communication activities for the community. So these are the actions for category 1. Then for category 2, the actions are epidemiological surveillance and disease management. Here 3 T's are there, that is testing, treating and tracking the case. Then second one is screening of the migrants in these areas. Then integrated vector management by source reduction through environmental management. Then IEC activities with involvement of private healthcare providers, NGOs and communities. Okay. And for category 3, the actions will be epidemiological surveillance and disease management by early diagnosis and complete treatment. Then management of severe malaria cases by strengthening of district and sub-district hospitals and quality referral services. Then integrated vector management by insecticidal residual spray and distribution of long-lasting insecticidal treated nets. Then additional supportive interventions. Okay. So this completes the malaria, where we have seen the epidemiology of malaria, in that agent, host and environmental factors. Then we saw life cycle of malarial parasite. Then clinical features, in that cold stage, hot stage and sweating stage. Then diagnosis, in that mainly 2 methods, microscopy, which is the gold standard, and then rapid diagnostic test, and one of the again third method, serology. Then we saw treatment of uncomplicated malaria, in that Plasmodium vivax and Plasmodium falciparum treatment. The chloroquine for Plasmodium vivax and ACT for Plasmodium falciparum. Then treatment of severe malaria using parenteral anti-malarials. Then again we saw various malariometric measures in pre-eradication era and eradication era, like spleen rate, infant parasite rate, then API, ABR, etc. And lastly, we saw the malaria component in the National Vector-Borne Disease Control Program in brief. Okay. So this completes the malaria. Thank you.